Sane Occultism by Dion Fortune. Narrated by Matthew Schmitz. 7. Records of Past Lives. To many, the doctrine of reincarnation is one of the most illuminating contributions that esoteric science makes to human thought. It is logically satisfying, inspires to noble living, and gives hope and courage in adversity. Not only does it explain much in human life that is otherwise incomprehensible and purposeless, but it also enables the broad outlines of the future to be foretold with a considerable degree of accuracy. It is not, of course, as detailed as a progressed horoscope, but if the line of development pursued by the soul in the past be known, it is often possible to draw conclusions as to possible developments in the future, especially in matters connected with initiation and occult work. But just as any medicine which is strong enough to cure is also strong enough to poison if wrongly used, so the doctrine of reincarnation is no more foolproof than any other aspect of occult science. Indeed, it is more liable to abuse than most, for it is a very simple matter, granted sufficient imagination, to construct elaborate romances concerning past lives. Experience of occult circles show that this form of psychism is among their most popular, if not most profitable activities. Whoever is sincerely concerned for the prestige and purity of occult science cannot but regret that so valuable a doctrine should thus be brought into ridicule and discredit by the folly of its adherents. We badly need some standard of proof which shall be applicable to all such statements. For the most part, they are a matter of ipse dixit on the part of some psychic, and no proof is offered or required, because it is not realized that proof is available. A brief statement of the methods of obtaining past records may serve to show how proof may be obtained and tests applied. Unless some counter-checking evidence is available, it is unwise to give credence to such reports, however much they may appeal to the subconscious self, whose other name may be vanity. The record of every action performed, or feeling felt, or thought conceived is preserved as an image in the reflecting ether, which is really the memory of the planetary spirit. It is as if a mirror retained impressions like a photographic plate. These images, however, are not stored in any haphazard fashion, but obey the same law of association of ideas as do our own subconscious memories. Those things which occur in sequence are linked together, so that if one thing is recovered by consciousness, all those connected with it tend to be drawn into the consciousness also. Details of this psychological process are given in my book, Machinery of the Mind, and need not be entered upon here. But not only do those incidents which occur in sequence become linked together, but also those which occur simultaneously, or at the same place, or which deal with the same subject. It will thus be seen that if a single image from a particular organization of ideas can be brought into consciousness, it is a comparatively simple matter to recover the rest of the ideas connected with it by inhibiting other thoughts and allowing them to rise spontaneously into consciousness, as they will, if not deflected. Memories of past lives, then, can be recovered from the reflecting ether, or subconscious mind of the planet, provided we can get any single idea which shall serve us as a starting point. It is this absence of a clue which presents the difficulty, just as we can often repeat a poem which we have once learned, but apparently forgotten, provided the first line be given us. So although all records are readily available in the reflecting ether for such as can read therein, it is the exceeding richness of the material which baffles our researchers. We might seek for days and weeks, and while recovering much that was of interest, fail to locate that which we sought unless we had some definite starting point. Many things can serve as a starting point. Sometimes fragments of memories are retained in childhood and can be recalled later. Sometimes they come through in dreams, or are awakened by the sight of a place, or even the reading of a book that deals with the period in question. Moreover, in the deepest subconscious memory of each of us, all our personal records are stored. That subconsciousness, however, is closely barred from the direct access of the personality, and we have to rely on indirect methods of approach. Any effort of will or attention usually defeats its own ends by leading us into the land of fantasy. When we are seeking to remember our own lives, we have to depend on the chance hints which circumstance may bring us. We can no more force the memory than we can force the recollection of a forgotten name. By the very fact that it is in the subconscious mind, it is by definition beyond the reach of consciousness, and we have got to wait for it to be brought within reach by some extraneous agency before we can avail ourselves of it. Should any fragment of the past come within the range of our apprehension, however, it is only a matter of the patient application of the technique of free association for the whole of that life to be reconstructed from the subconscious memory in an infinitude of detail only limited by our patience. When a psychic seeks to read the past records of another, a different method is used. He has to find some point in his own record where the trails cross, otherwise he will be unable to pick up the end of the thread of connected memory images. A very tenuous clue will serve his purpose. Some common memory, however unimportant, a mutual association with the Egyptian temples or French medieval life of approximately the same period, some minor fact that is within the range of both memories, and the contact is through. The end of the thread is in the psychic's hand, and the screen of memories can be unwound. Sometimes the psychic will read from place memories, and sometimes straight off the querent's subconsciousness. Both methods are equally efficacious. It also sometimes happens that a spirit communicating through a trance medium will give records of the past lives of a querent, using the same methods to read them as are employed by an investigator incarnated in a physical body. We have then all these different methods of obtaining access to the records, and anyone who has had experience of the matter will readily see that the problem is not so much to read the records as to prevent the images and fantasies in the subconscious mind of both querent and psychic from intruding upon the screen. Suppressed or thwarted desires are a potent and prolific source of such intrusion, as the psychoanalysts have demonstrated. But a long-forgotten novel dealing with the same subject is just as likely to contribute its quota when that particular memory stratum is struck with which it is associated. We may have identified ourselves with the hero or heroine of some story read in the impressionable days of adolescence, and later, when we begin to investigate our karmic records, reproduce the whole plot as a fantasy of a past life. The problem which confronts us in the reading of the records is, frankly, one of elimination and rejection of the spurious and irrelevant out of the mass of subconscious material presented to us. The psychic has to follow a very tenuous thread through very tortuous ramifications, and it is exceedingly easy to go off on a wrong scent after following the right one for some time. For this reason, records of past lives are usually obtained in a very fragmentary state. When the querent is reading his own memories, or a psychic is reading them for him, there will usually be a few clear-cut and detailed scenes, and but little coherence until the free association method painstakingly works out the details. When a communicator from the inner planes gives the records, however, they will usually be synoptic, that is to say, a series of brief records such as are given in popular encyclopedia. These records are an invaluable basis for future work, as they furnish most valuable clues and can always be filled in subsequently by the free association method. Those who are fortunate enough to get such a series given them should be at great pains to preserve even the most irrelevant details for this reason. It is not often, however, that communicating spirits can give these records, for unless they are themselves of a certain degree of development, they will not be able to rise to the plane beyond which the second death has no power. That is to say, so long as consciousness is still focused in the non-material aspects of the personality, the entity will have no memory or knowledge of those things which pertain to the individuality, the reincarnating ego, and therefore, for him, the personality of his last life is his only being. It is not until consciousness rises to the level of the higher self that past lives are remembered. Therefore, it is that the average communicating spirit has no more knowledge of past lives than the average incarnated spirit, or common man. It is only when we are working under the aegis of a school of initiation that we begin to touch the spirits that have this higher consciousness, in heaven as on earth, and then they will tell us of past ages and read the records for us if permission can be obtained. But for such a reading, permission always has to be obtained from the master who has the pupil in keeping, for this knowledge is not lightly to be communicated, and if given indiscreetly, may do more harm than good. The best and simplest way to countercheck records of past incarnations is to get several different psychics to read the records without allowing them to know what has already been read. A remarkable degree of confirmation is usually obtained. Those things in which they spontaneously confirm each other may be taken as established by the testimony of independent witnesses, and those in which they contradict each other may be taken as inaccurately observed. It will always happen, however, that different psychics will report things which remain unconfirmed. These need not necessarily be discarded, they must merely be regarded as not proven until confirmation is forthcoming. One psychic may see one thing, and another psychic may very well miss it and see another when there is such a wealth of detail to be seen. Our next method of counter-checking is to seek to explain the known facts of the present life in the light of the past. We ought to be able to see a clear line of causation leading up to them if the records have been correctly read for a series of incarnations. Moreover, if we are able to see the hand of the remote past showing itself in the immediate past, we ought also to be able to see it showing itself in the future, and this is the most satisfying test of the accurate reading of past incarnations, and its most valuable justification. Let us give an example to make this matter clear. Supposing A, B, and C have been associated together repeatedly in past lives. If A and B have already met, it is probable that C is not far off, and will in due course appear upon the scene and play his old part. If this should occur, there is proof positive and ample justification for accepting the reading of the records as substantially accurate, though no such reading will ever be complete owing to the enormous complexity of the matter involved. Therefore, we must always be prepared for unsuspected factors to introduce unexpected causes. If these two methods, the counter-checking of psychics by one another and the rechecking of the results by observation of the life be employed, we shall obtain evidence which ought to be good enough for anyone save the professional skeptic. In the absence of the possibility of such systematic counter-checking, there are certain things which render a record suspect. If we see the cloven hooves of the natural instincts peeping out, we shall know that we need look little further than the subconscious mind for the source of the records. These instincts show themselves in two ways. The self-preservation instinct has, for one of its aspects, the very human impulse of self-aggrandizement. If a person of very ordinary attainments in this life claims to have been someone of very extraordinary attainments in the past, we may well ask one of two things: whether the record is true, or, if true, what he has been doing in the meantime thus to have come down in the world of spiritual development. To claim greatness in the past does not so much cast a reflected glory on a mediocre present life as suspicion on the intervening lives, which have apparently written Ichabod on the wall. The great bulk of mankind at the present time consists of very ordinary people leading rather drab lives. It is curious that so many records of past incarnations represent very extraordinary people leading very lurid lives. One may not unreasonably ask why it is that the average should have undergone such a drastic change. The highly colored should be as suspect in stories from the past as it usually is in stories about the present. Equally, when the cloven hoof of romance, especially illicit romance, shows itself, we would do well to proceed with caution and ask many questions. Why is it that the fact of a twin soul linked to us by bonds of karma was never suspected until that soul is actually met face to face in incarnation, whereupon memory leapt to consciousness spontaneously? If we had actually had such a twin soul, the memory of it would have, in all probability, shown itself in childhood, and we should have been awaiting its coming for years. Moreover, why is it that twin souls never by any possible chance marry each other, but always appear as someone else's legal spouse? The fact of having really met one's twin soul might or might not be sufficient reason to abandon one's responsibilities and honor, but it is very odd that twin souls are so seldom able to ratify the bond in the eyes of society. We must face the fact that in our present imperfect state of society, a great many marriages leave one or other of the contracting parties spiritually unmated, and that the unsatisfied one will be greatly tempted to remate elsewhere. Emotional starvation begets emotional tension, and when in such an overwrought and unsatisfied state of mind an attractive stranger is met, whose weaknesses proximity has not revealed and whose magnetism familiarity has not dulled, the unexpectedly violent emotional reaction is accounted for by the hypothesis of a karmic tie which has come down through the ages, wherein life after life the two who are mutually attracted have been linked together, and the unfortunate superfluous spouse of this incarnation, who is cast for the part of villain of the piece, has nothing to do but stand aside while the twin souls rush together in obedience to the inevitable laws of their fate. No one is held to be to blame for this save the superfluous spouse, who has unfortunately and in ignorance appropriated that which was not his or hers. The suffering of the unwanted one is regrettable, but inevitable because the laws of karma decree it. How often has one heard this specious argument advanced in extenuation of what is, after all, adultery? The fact that adultery takes place with unedifying frequency between people who have never heard of karmic ties but are merely prompted by their instincts is not apparently held to throw any light on the matter. The allegation of a karmic tie is held to be sufficient reason for demanding a separate classification. It is not an easy thing to adjudge the rights and wrongs of a matrimonial problem, and no man can say what the temptations and bitternesses of another may have been. But at least we can say this, that there is nothing in the law of karma or the forces working through from the past which justifies, although it may explain, infidelity. To be tempted is one thing, to yield is another. The memory of past lives is mercifully hidden from the average man, and experience shows that it is well that it is so, for a soul needs to have reached a certain degree of enlightenment before it is able to make the right use of the knowledge. Because a thing has happened in the past is no reason why it should be allowed to recur again. Forewarned should mean forearmed. What is the use of knowing the past if we use our knowledge as a justification for repeating our mistakes instead of by profiting by them? We are merely piling up fresh karma for the future. When karmic problems confront us, our best course is to put aside all personal considerations and, regardless of self, work them out in accordance with cosmic law. We shall then be karma-free in that respect, and although the present life may have to be dedicated to the task of unwinding the tangle, the path of the future will lie open before us.